All right, we'll get started. Here we are. All right, we're back. We're recording. Welcome to the Back Bone Zone. My name's Tyson, and today we have a very special guest, Zac Miner. Zac Miner is a really good friend of mine for starters, and then also rides for the shop, rides for Colt, and had a big long sponsorship with Colony before that, and he has his own roofing company, Miner Projects, so it's pretty exciting to jump back on the mic. Yeah, I'm pretty much just wanted to have you back in, so thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Zach,
I'm excited for this.
I know.
We were just joking about how it was like we had a podcast prior to this and it was pretty B grade compared to this. It was like proper.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see this, man.
I know. I'm pretty. I remember I was the most hesitant doing this just because I loved the fact that we did it together for so long, and I was like, we did one episode. The recording got lost, and we just couldn't find our feet again, and it just killed me. And now I'm finally back, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I'm just doing it.
I think this is awesome the way that you've been the forefront for just being a voice for BMX, especially not only in Canberra, but across the world kind of thing. So like you were always brainstorming ideas, and I think that like I was just passenger in the last conversations, which was awesome. I just put my 2 cents in, but I think you're doing a good thing. I think more awareness for the young kids and just sort of telling stories from back in the day is really important.
Yeah, I think it's important too. I feel like that was the reason why we did it, to be honest. Like, yeah. I felt like, you weren't passengers at all. We were just doing it together.
Maybe I talked a lot.
But I feel like what we were just saying before, you kind of need to be able to do something in this day and age. Like, that's why I brought these out here, because I feel like magazines that have real content, like the Albion have, like deep as interviews, and you don't get that anymore. And that's something that I feel like no amount of social media will give you what a magazine used to give, because they used to have super, super deep insight into riders, I guess. Yeah. That's at least what I'm trying to do, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because...
Well, this is just the modern magazine, you know what I mean, where you get a perspective piece that is so relevant to so many people, but from your perspective, it's through your lens. And
yeah.
And I think that's what we were sort of talking about in the old podcast, is that, like we grew up on 2020, Rebel Yell, all these dig magazines, and you'd live through the words. Like you could see it in a photo. And I remember being really young in Denny and lining up with the newsagents, like racing in to get the next issue. And like it was a Bible to me, man. You kind of, I don't know, like I lived it. I was living BMX. And if you could live it through someone who was 2 hours away and their story, it was like you kind of just felt like you were growing in the scene through these words or pictures, and you were itching to get to the next jam because you missed it and you've only then read about it in a magazine. So
yeah, it's
in
a good
these
point.
Perspectives, in podcasts and stuff like that, I think it kind of gives you a different lens again, where it's visual, it's verbal, it's like and you can relay a lot more in podcasts as opposed to a magazine, because you just spitball on the whole time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's like working in the same way that your brain works when you're having a convo, rather than like sometimes people can't get ideas out and write them down as well as, if I were just having a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's an important part, because then people can see it in themselves. Sometimes like writing is just it's either too well written, and then people like lose interest because they don't think that way. Yeah. And that's unfortunate to some people who write really well. But yeah, I'm excited to do it, and I'm excited to have you on, and I'm actually really excited just because you we never really had the convo of like what your life story has been about, you know. And I guess I've got you on today because, you know, you recently had knee. Have you had knee surgery yet, or you just had knee injury?
Yeah, so 2.5 weeks post-op, knee reconstruction, and the whole package.
Yeah, what did you do?
The injury actually stemmed from when I was 17. Like some people know, but we grew up in little country towns and stuff like that. And I grew up in Denaliquin, which is, you know, 3 hours north of Melbourne and in the middle of nowhere. And, you know, like we had this like little 5-foot skate park and we were grommets. And like I was saying, we were just so invested in BMX. It was like our outlet compared to footy, or there was nothing else in the town. Like we got a skate park and built jumps. And so for us, man, it was night and day. You know, you'd wake up and all you think about was BMX and go to the skate park the next day. And we were from like maybe 15, we got the skate park, and then we got a little bit of a crew together in Denny, like Thomas, Matt, Ducky, Red, like all of these dudes that just sort of we all kind of came up together because the skate park started at the same time and we're all the same age. And weirdly, like the Denny scene was really cool. Like it was, dude, if you caught us on a good weekend after watching Forward Etnies or something like that, we'd be straight back down there. And the stuff that was going down in Denny was just the beginning kind of thing. But it was like we were just sending it, man. We were loose. It was just like fronty flyouts and just flyouts, just central. It was really good. But this injury came about from just an Oppo 3 and just put my foot down. And I was 17 and it like took me out. And essentially, like obviously you go see the doctors and all this sort of thing. And the doc sort of said to me, I've torn my ACL, like fully ripped it in half. And he was sort of saying, you know, you're going to have surgery, but you're not at the age where your body will kind of grow back the same. You'll almost be at a disadvantage if you have surgery now because your stems won't grow the same, and your growth in your leg, and they just frowned upon it.
Wow.
And I heard no surgery, and I was fucking over the moon. I was like, hell yeah, like that's all I needed to hear. I was kind of just a grommet, man. If I could ride, as soon as the injury happened, I was, you know, like, when can I ride again? And obviously it's been plaguing me for the last, it's coming up on like 16 years now. And it got worse. Like we actually went on a colony trip over to France, and I tore all my meniscus in my knee, and the same knee, and probably should have had surgery then. But just, I don't know, I was sort of young and broke and just kind of just wasn't really thinking about the long-term effects of what BMX injuries were in the time. But yeah, and then like just in the last couple of 6 months, like we've just been working flat out. I run my own business and working flat out and trying to get a house, and I let go of all the things that were keeping that knee stable, like yoga and riding constantly. Sure. And I just must have got tight, and it just went my whole knee. So,
wow.
So there was the original ACL tear, and then the meniscus tear on the medial side, and then because that was all torn, it actually, my meniscus on the left-hand side, the lateral side, was wearing all the load, and that gave way. And then there was a root tear on the medial tear as well. So the whole knee just gave up after all this time. And
oh my god.
Yeah, and like it was doing nothing. It's not even a cool story. Like I feel like I've sent myself down some of the biggest sets and just like,
yeah, I wanted to know what it was from.
It's just in the shed, just and just kind of come unstuck and got unlucky. But man, everything happens for a reason. You kind of just, it's like there's no good time, but at the end of the day, it needed to happen eventually. And I probably at the time in my life right now when it's feasible to sort of rebound and come back, and I feel like I'm glad it's happened in a way.
Yeah.
Because I've had a knee at 60% for 17 years, and I'll now have a brand new knee. As long as I do the recovery, I'll have 100% back, and I'll be better.
Wow.
Yeah. So
is insane to me that so I didn't even know that you had done your knee so badly and never got it fixed. Like I did know that you hurt it when you were overseas doing the whole colony thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that you'd like tore your ACL so young. And I feel like it's something that a lot of BMXers go through where it's like injury time, but everyone just wants to get back to riding. Like you go see a physio maybe, and then you don't really listen to the physio's like advice.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that you've gone so long and just done so much crazy shit and never had like you've never really had any issues from what I can see. Like your knee looks bloody perfect to me. Like give me it.
Yeah.
I want your knee.
Yeah,
But no, that's good that it's
cheap on eBay.
I guess you're very lucky that you're in this position now where you can look towards actually getting something fixed. And yeah. Does that mean
in a different mindset too? I think like, you know, being at the age, even when I did the colony trip and had that injury, I think I was 24 and dude, all I cared about, like I didn't even have a job, an inspiring job. I was just working to ride and traveling, and I was lucky enough to be on colony and sort of live that life. But then after it all stops, you sort of focus, like especially now, like I'm sort of out of the scene a little bit more, but the importance of being healthy as I get older and sort of maintaining. And I wish I did that back then. Like those little steps, like whether it's yoga or going for a run or something, or just maintaining is like the simplest thing. Wow. And you can have a longer life in the sport you love, as opposed to some people that just sort of put it in the back burner and go, nah, I'll be fine, man. And then they kind of get out of it at 25 to 28 and stop riding because they've got that niggle in their leg and I don't want to get hurt because I've got to work on the weekend or whatever. And
yeah, you hear that a bit, not too much, but you definitely hear that from some people. Like they just struggle with like, oh, I've got to give up riding because I've got this injury that keeps plaguing me. Yeah. But how do you feel now? So like, obviously you've got a ways to recover. I don't know how long do you have to recover?
They said to me that it's around about 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
And
you're wearing a knee brace right now and all the...
Yeah, so in a bind at the moment where I'm at the physio once a week at the moment, and it's kind of like I'm not one to sit still either. Like every injury I've ever had, and I think like I've actually built a bit of resilience in injuries throughout the years, is just because you kind of know your tolerance. And so many injuries I've had, and then the doctor will say to you, you've got 3 months before you're able to walk. And it's almost like a disability to you. You can't fathom that. And so when you, like for me, I just can't sit still anyway. So, and the fact that I can sort of feel out what I can push the boundaries to. And if you're doing everything right, like what the physio is doing, and just speed track that, your recovery seems to kind of almost come sped fast compared to what they say it is, because they give you worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And for me, like when they say 3 to 6 months, I know that like I could already be back on the roof at the moment and walking around, as long as I'm sort of cautious about my movements. But that actually speeds up the recovery because you're not just completely sedentary on the couch for freaking 3 to 6 months. You're out doing stuff. Yeah. You don't strike me as someone that's on the couch very much. Yeah.
But do you feel like, so obviously, BMX is still a big part of your life, but do you feel like it's something that you're reassessing now, that when you get back, are you going to be like not riding as much or riding as hard, or you still feel the fire, or what's the...
It's definitely given me a different outlook compared to where I was right before the injury.
Yeah.
So like we bought a house and my focus was, like I'm a creative and I love to do shit with my house and that sort of thing. But that sort of overtook the BMX side of it, because in some ways I wasn't inspired anymore. I feel like that side of, I felt like the community was still there, but, like I'd rather just go and have dinner with you or something like that as opposed to go for a ride because, like my hours were cut a bit short because of the business or something. But so you're still very much a part of the scene. You love talking about it, but the inspiration to go out and do new stuff or even get a lap or something like that had been lost for a bit.
Yeah, sure.
And it's just my own mental games that I was playing with myself. But this has sort of given me that rebirth of where, when they said to me, you've had a knee at 60% for 17 years and you always compensate and stuff like that. But like, imagine if you could just have a knee and you do things right, like it sparks something again where I'm like, like, what if, I don't know, like, cause I can't turn it off either. Like I still go around and see spots that I'm like, man, that shouldn't be done, but I could do it, like it's a drug. You kind of, you're infatuated with the search almost more than doing the trick.
Yeah.
In a way.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that I'm glad to hear that it doesn't, put you off the idea of far out, I've had this big injury now. I've got to start thinking about toning it back. But it's because I've had similar thing to me, but not even that. Certainly not that bad. I didn't even get a scan for it because the physio said that I didn't have to. But I got according to the exercises that she did to make sure what was wrong. Like I had partially tore my MCL, and she said that I might have had a meniscus tear or something.
Yeah.
And I definitely was should I get it scanned? Because I knew that I kind of, if I had have got it scanned, then that way I probably would have actually taken it seriously and not ridden it all. But she was like, "Oh, you don't need to get it scanned." And I'm like, oh, all right. So now I'll just keep riding. You know what I mean?
Pre-cut.
I know.
Here you go. You don't have to get it scanned.
You'll be right. Just
put it in the back.
Take it easy for 6 weeks. I'm like, well, taking it easy is essentially just still riding.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to try new shit.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Only because we're essentially the same age. Your birthday come up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A week or so.
Wow. How old are you?
21.
Yeah, I thought so. 21 with change.
Yeah. A lot of change.
Yeah.
But going on 35. So I'm in my mid 30s, and I guess you kind of, your drive sort of changes even as you just get that little bit older and stuff like that. And I found that throughout the course of my riding time, I had to change things up to keep inspired. Whether it was chainless or brakeless or putting brakes back on, 4 pegs, 3 pegs, I constantly had to do that to stay enthused.
Yeah.
And have that spark that there's something new, and then obviously that's one side of it, but then your perception changes over 2 years. So you go to the skate park 2 years later, and you've never seen that line before, but it was always there, and all of a sudden you're just like, man, it makes complete sense to hit that line.
Yeah.
So there's a constant change of the wheel when you're in BMX, and as long as you keep it inspired and sort of looking for that, I think it's you don't lose it.
Yeah.
You don't lose that spark, and I think if you've got that idea that you've just got to keep changing it up a bit, then it doesn't matter what age you are. You can be 40, 50, and it's still going to keep you psyched in a way.
Yeah, I feel the same way now. I obviously that I'm pretty balls deep in watching fights and combat world and things like that. And a lot of people talk about how athletic prime is in your sort of that mid 30s, a little bit earlier than 35, and we're both 35, so we're pretty close to it. And I feel mentally I'm just as headstrong to try something as what I was however long ago, and I definitely feel physically stronger than what I did.
Yeah.
But now it's just more we've spoken about this before, but the risk versus reward. It's not that I can't take a slam, but it's just more I don't want to have to go through slamming a bunch of times just to see if I can do it.
Yeah.
I don't get as inspired by trying something hard unless it looks really interesting to me.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what
true.
I mean? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
like like you say, you still drive past spots and things like that, and now I have to be like truly, like almost like this weird spark has to go off in my head, like, oh man, I'm excited to try that, because I guess we've just gone through, so we've seen a lot more. You know, we've been riding for a long time, so it's just hard to be like as excited to do something that feels probably similar to something you've already done, you know.
Well, which that problem with repetition, you know, like if you're doing the same thing over, you lose interest.
Yeah.
And like,
having said that, I just like riding the exact same way that I've been riding for.
But I feel like your tucks have gotten better, your tabos have got more laid out. Like you're finessing the little things that matter, you know.
Yeah, the feeling, I guess, is what it's all about. But I guess, so that was one thing that I did want to talk to you about, because, you know, I'll show you a photo. It's pretty funny. Well, I wouldn't say it's funny, but it's just, I found this photo of you. That's from when we, you know, the original Backbone shop, which I think we moved out of in 2008, I want to say. So that would have been, you know, prior to 2008 sometime. I don't know exactly when, but, you know, at that point in time, you don't have brakes on there, but, you know, you were riding brakes, you were riding park.
Yeah.
I actually remember you were one of the first dudes that I ever saw do a tuck no hand air, which is pretty crazy. And you were also doing topside no foot can airs. Like, that was pretty, in real life, I was like, phew, you know, it's crazy to see that. But, you know, you've evolved so much from this, like, rider that was like that to now. I mean, you've got a free coaster on now, but for a couple of years you were riding no chain. Like, do you feel like something that like that was a conscious thing? Like you were like, well, you know, because you got onto Colony, right? And you were riding, I guess, more of a skate park style that was not like skate park competition style, but you know, like just flowy jumping around, and you could do everything. Like it was insane watching you ride, and it still is. But do you feel like getting sponsored by Colony was something where you're like, oh, I'm going to consciously decide to change my riding up? Or
dude, well, it's funny, like the timeline of that photo and being put on Colony coincides with the change that was happening with me. With, you know, I was very much a dirt rider, a skate park rider, and loved it, you know, like, and we'd kind of been established in Canberra long enough by that point, maybe like 3 years, that you really started to really finesse the bowls and riding bigger stuff. And then coincide with that, like I met Liam, Fayhampton, Dan, Nick, and seeing this other side of BMX that I had really no interest in prior to that. Like I love BMX and any aspect of it, but dude, if you got to see Liam ride in person, like just some of the stuff that he could do was crazy. Like it was so before its time. And he was chainless then.
Yeah.
And it gave me this perception of street riding where it interests me to hit a rail. It never interested me before until Liam was maybe calling me a bitch and just to hit it. And but like that spark again, it's just that evolution of like what you're uncomfortable with, and you gotta sort of sit with that for a bit. You gotta, like, the chainless thing doesn't work straight away. Like you've really got to like put time into being chainless and sort of figuring out your balance point.
Yeah.
And like even doing like a downside whip air, everything changes.
Yeah.
And you've really got to sort of finesse the little things like manuals, tail taps, like it's starting from scratch again. And so Liam really changed that perspective of what was comfortable and sort of challenged what I thought I could do. And it's the same with street riding. Like when you first try and hit a street rail, it's the most uncomfortable, awkward, terrifying thing you've ever done in your life. And you got to slam. You got to like, you'll have those moments where you eat shit on the simplest shit. And then years later, like I'm not afraid to, double peg a big rail, because everything along the way you've lived and you learn, and you're a calculated risk, and almost as you get older you become more calculated in what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
And whether you challenge the spectrum of what's possible, it's like, yeah, like, and then throughout the years with Colony, like I found I was riding with park guys more commonly, like some of the best park riders. And I didn't fit that envelope. Like I felt like I was always watching more than I was riding, because they were just so good. And I was good, but in my own space.
Yeah.
In a skate park that I could ride and I could do. But you go on tour and you're like, man, they throw a new skate park at you. You're just doing the simple shit. And then like Alex Heim would be doing truck driver to foot jam whip, like,
yeah,
and everything, because he's hungry, and that was who he was.
Yeah.
So I started to take this backseat role and hang around with the street dudes, and before you know it, like there's just this love that grows for street riding, where you can on the backbone.
All right, sorry about that. We're back. A little technical issue, but yes, I guess you were talking about that's right. You were talking about your riding changing from park to street with the Colony guys, and I guess that was one thing where I wanted to just sort of ask how. I guess what I was getting at with it was it something that the pressure of being sponsored by anyone drew you to a particular type of riding, or was it just that you were looking at a type of riding because of the inspiration that it gave you?
I think in some ways you kind of fall into a pattern of what that company is about.
Mm-hmm.
So Colony was very much a park orientated, or like not so much street.
Yeah.
It was like their content was more park riders.
Yeah.
So I definitely felt that there was more of an obligation. If I did put content up, it was more at the start just to get park clips.
Yeah.
But then I think you got to do you at the end of the day, and I think that's what I've always done. So there was that voice in the back of your head, but man, I just kind of just felt like I was immersed in the Canberra scene, or I was attracted to the people that I like to watch.
Yeah.
So like obviously young dudes are growing up and they're either like, they like watching big bowl riders or trail or skate park, and that's what they like. And you'll follow certain riders, like, like you could be a park rider that's Logan Martin, or you could be a park rider that's Kevin Peraza. Two totally different perspectives. And you can be whoever you want these days. But back then it sort of felt like you had to, in some ways you've had to fit a mold and be that person. And then obviously the whole world shifted in sort of like 2010, when everyone went brakeless and more street riding was more evident in content. So you kind of fit that scene as well, and you kind of just want to leave your mark on what is relevant too. Like you don't want to be in the shadows as such, but you want to like be relevant. So I would just send myself down some big ass shit. And it was just because it was just, to me, it just seemed easier than trying to film a park edit and be relevant. When
like progressive.
I wasn't moving in the same circles as what Alex Heim and stuff like that were. And,
I understand what you're saying. I feel very similarly, you know what I mean? Like you can't, at some point you're just like, man, I can't keep up with that type of riding. So you just find something that that's probably where you were at. Like I find something that I enjoy doing, and I guess people like you for that, and that's the same thing that people liked you for the way that you were riding. You didn't need to do it. You don't even like. I think that's a good point, just in general. Like no one really needs to do anything to keep up with anyone. And the quicker you find that out, the quicker you sort of carve your own niche of the type of riding that's enjoyable to you, and then people notice that. If that's something that, you know, if you want to be noticed or whatever, like that's what it is. And I guess that kind of brings me to the next thing too. Like you were just saying, you always, you know, walk to the beat of your own drum a bit. And, you know, you were very, as far as Australian BMX goes, you're a pretty professional BMX rider, you know what I mean? You went on
hack, you know?
like you went on a lot of trips worldwide with Colony. You had the last part in the Colony video, which was a pretty big, very big deal at the time. Like, you know, Colony is the premier Australian BMX brand, and certainly at that time was like on a rocket ship to being the biggest brand in the world. And you had the last part in that video, which is insane to think. That's so awesome, like crazy. And but you almost decided like I don't want to do that anymore, and you stopped riding for Colony. Was that something that was a hard decision, or?
Yeah, it really was, because you don't realize how much like BMX is a big family, and everything that's ever been put in front of you before that, whether it's a riding trip or a bike part or something like that, someone's helping you out. Like someone's gone out of their way to give you a leg up to be a better rider. And sometimes you lose that, and I think I lost that a little bit. Like I was dealing with my own stuff around that time as well, and I kind of lost the interest in BMX in some regards, but I still had it. And I feel like the Colony saga was kind of it was tough, because I felt like the scene was changing within the company. It was I remember when we first started, you know, like they were the best names in BMX in Australia, and everybody knew each other. Everybody felt a part of the team. And Miller was so on board with like bringing you into the conversations on, you know, we're going to hook this dude up. And you're like, fuck yeah. Like, you know, like you were psyched on the people that were coming on the team. Yeah. And then towards the end, you know, and as I've learning even in my own business and stuff like that, it's Miller's running a business and he's got to sell frames and stuff like that. So like, regardless of that, like Miller was doing stuff behind the scenes to keep the business going. But for me, I felt like it was just a change of the guard, where, you know, like it wasn't as together as what it was when we first started. Yeah. And I felt like that, you know, maybe I was like slacking a bunch, but, you know, like I was still put my hand up to go to trips and stuff like that. And I was so passionate to keep doing edits, where instead it came very corporate. You had to do this many Instagram posts, you had to do this many Facebook things, and that was nothing to the beat of my drum. Like I was more about the art side of it, where you could go out and create content and wait for it to come out in a magazine, or you do an edit, or you do, and it was like the reveal was the premiere. It was like, that was what got me psyched forever in BMX. Yeah. And like it just kind of just stepped away from that. And it's no diss to Colony. Like I'm so grateful for whatever those years that I had, because I met a lot of people, traveled the world, and incredibly grateful for it. But I think I was taking a different path at the same time as well, where I just wanted to do me and the way I wanted to do it. And so, and it like kind of in retrospect, the timeline of when that all happened is like, maybe I'd slipped off the boat a little bit, but we just started filming the Back Bone DVD, and like we were getting clips. We were going in. Yeah. We were getting content. Yeah. But as if you could just put that up on Instagram, you know what I mean? So like behind the scenes, we're still riding as hard as possible. And I was very much on trips and I was very much riding. But in the eyes of the internet, you kind of like, you're not doing enough, man. Or like, you know, why does that dude get sponsored a pro and stuff like that? And it kind of burdens on the bosses of whatever businesses are running. But man, like, and a colony happened, and then we dropped an Affray edit, we dropped a goodbye edit, and then the Backbone DVD premiered like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And so like all of that content was ready and going, but just having those conversations where people had an opinion about whether I was writing or not, and whether I was writing enough, and I don't know if that was the case, but
Yeah.
it's kind of how it felt. Really.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's hard to, like, I can 100%, we were just having this conversation, like, it's hard for you to, you want to do what makes you happy, and for you, writing is going really hard, not trying to put out like some B grade stuff on Instagram all the time. So for you, it was like, oh man, I'm just trying to write as best I can and hold on to all that footage to create something great that I can look back on.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a tough one with, I can totally understand from Colony's perspective, because I mean, Backbone's in the same boat. You know, like, we have this team of absolute badass writers, but like, I've kind of just realized, and we were just saying this before, I've realized that I can't expect all those guys to just give me content or Instagram posts and things like that, because they're either trying to save, or like, people just aren't like vending machines. You can't just put $1 in and then get something else out.
They're some of the most badass writers, and the stuff they do is so niche.
Exactly.
That like, they'd almost feel embarrassed to put up like a tabletop that is like above fucking 2 foot above the water. Like, it doesn't. What is the purpose? What do you gain from that? Like, other than people having this perception of you that you're like, oh, you're just kind of a half-assed writer. Yeah. Where like everyone that I know that's in the Backbone team, like, you look at the DVD and everyone went in, and like the dudes that are on it can shred. Yeah. And it's almost like, but they're not doing that all the time. They just can do that when they want to do it. Like, it's like fucking gnarly shit. Yeah, kind of like, you wouldn't want to just send that just for the gram every day, or fucking, that's right. You want to make it, like, have a purpose. It's
very true. Like, I think that it's just it's a different time, and I don't think the writers that write for the shop has that mindset. Like, I struggle with that now, because I am totally aware that, if we don't post stuff on Backbone, for example, on the social media, then people probably think like, none of these dudes ride. Like, what are they doing? They don't even dig trails no more. Like, whatever. Like, none of them riding street or whatever. And it's like, it's totally not the case. It's just that we just have this thing going on where one, a lot of us just do it just to do it, and we're not thinking like, who's the filmer? Yeah. And let's get this on for the gram. Yeah. And then the other thing is that a lot of people literally don't want to put stuff on the gram. Like, I even feel like I sometimes purposely put stuff on Instagram that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's like, I'm just not riding to my best level, and I'm kind of disappointed when I put it up there, but like, I'll do it just because I want people to know that people, I want people, like, I'm lucky enough to get free bikes from, and I want people to know that I'm riding, because if I didn't make that effort, then I would, people would think that I'm not riding, but that's not the case. I ride all the time. But to get back to that, the point of, I guess what Colony was expecting of you, I'm not speaking for them, but in the case of Backbone, we can't expect anything from any of the riders that ride for the team unless we facilitate that to happen. You know what I mean? Because I don't want people to feel like I don't want people to feel like BMX is an effort to them. Like, oh, far out, I got to go do this. Otherwise, I just want people to be riding and having a good time, and then me as the person who owns Backbone to be like, oh, you riding? I'm going to come out and film you to do this. And if you got anything you want to film, then that's right. It's almost like you're giving a platform for, as much as you've got a purpose for what you're intending to try and do. And like,
it's not obvious. It's not like you're whipping the camera out, fucking ready to go, boys, let's go. But it's like, if you set that scene and just create a spot to have a session, whether it's a jam or even if it's just at the trails, and you capture something in that few minutes, that's more wholesome content than, you know, like what it felt like at the end of Colony, where, don't get me wrong, Miller did so much and gave me so much. There was an incentive there, and there was trips and all that sort of thing. But there's a line that happens where you start doing it as a job and not a hobby, where you're paid to do this. And that was the strong arm at the end, is, you know, like, you're getting paid to do this, why aren't you getting this much content? And it's like, it's really hard because you're not that dude who's a content creator, but you do your shit, and it's two different perspectives. As a person who's sponsoring you, they are giving you all the platforms to do the right things, but in some ways, some people just aren't that dude that is a contest rider or a content creator. They are just a badass BMXer, and when it comes time, they will get it for you for the right things. But Instagram was just this empty platform that you'd put it on and it'd be gone tomorrow, and you felt like it was just a waste of time. Yeah. So in some ways, it's content for the right reason. People are getting their likes up, and the scene, the image of the brand is getting bigger. But in the same token, it's like, fuck, if they're just seeing me do the same shit all the time, they're just going to think I'm this rubbish BMXer and just washed up. Like, and in some ways it's true, but like, I just found that when I did leave Colony, that the best riding I was doing was at that time, because there was no pressure. Yeah. It was like, it just gave me, like, it was really hard to swallow that I was no longer sponsored to that degree, but it made me way more hungrier to, like, I went in harder on the Back Bone DVD. I went in hard to get more content, because maybe I should have been. It's just two different things for what it is for Instagram and videos for the Colony YouTube page, compared to when you're doing a video, and that's the art, that's the creative level that until you do it, you don't realize what it is, and you long for it after that. Once you've done one, I was super lucky to get the ender in the Colony DVD, and that's what I aspired to do next. Yeah. As opposed to Instagram or something.
And I mean, that's exactly you know what I mean? There's nothing I think, just to make sure that people know, like, I know that you don't think badly of people that try to get clips on Instagram, and to me, it's like it blows my mind that people can get so many good clips time after time. I mean, Alex Heim is a perfect example of that. Everything he does, it's like, fucking hell, this dude is insane.
You're putting that up on the gram for?
I know.
That's my ender.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I think it's just the appreciation that you have, and for, you know, that timeless content. And I know that DVDs are, you know, a lot of people don't even have a DVD player, but that thing that you can go and revisit as a collection of all of your writing, and it's kind of like this time capsule of you. It's such a good feeling, you know, like you can't beat that, and that's what I want to do with Back Bone too. So, but yeah, it's interesting to hear that was your best riding was essentially when you were unsponsored, you know. I mean, I think you're probably still riding for a Frey or whatever, potentially. Or
Frey and Back Bone and stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
But like, there's a different conversation with the dudes that, I'm not talking ill on Miller or nothing like that, but that was very much a job towards the end. Yeah. And then when you're doing it, and you're doing it for the people that love the scene, it sounds really bad what I'm saying, but like, I feel like when I was doing it for Back Bone, or if I was doing it for a Frey, there wasn't this pressure to get the clip.
It was like the expectation wasn't there, so you just felt like that was easy to deal with, the fact that you wanted to do it off your own back. Yeah.
It's like when you ride comps, as soon as the stopwatch starts, you're like, fuck, I'm fucking sweating already. And then as soon as you're not, you probably ride the best you've ever ridden all day.
Yeah, that's
It's
exactly
like,
right.
There's that added pressure all of a sudden that
Yeah.
changes who you are in BMX. And if you're not that dude, then
Yeah, that's
it
exactly.
kind of like, it was very much me. I was just like, I hit a wall and I was like, appreciate it, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah, it just comes down to some people just thrive under that crazy pressure of because it's a weird one. You know, BMX can be like I've said in the past as well. Like BMX can be a job and it can be a hobby and it can be just this passion that you have. And I think that sometimes the people who have passion for BMX are also the ones that are really good at riding, but then it's kind of hard to grapple with this idea of like, oh, now I've got to do it for someone else. So if I don't do it for someone else, then I'm all of a sudden not good enough to be doing it. It's this weird like mental space that you get put in. Yeah, it's interesting. And that's...
How do you see it coming from, Backbone's been established for so long and the generations have changed from, I feel like I was a part of that early stage. You had Risty on the other day and talking about how he was selling stuff at Western Creek out the back of his ute. That's when I moved to Canberra, and I was like, the scene grew from that, and like you were immersed in that part of that evolution of Canberra, not knowing how big it was going to be. Yeah. But everyone was riding because you would wait for Friday night sessions at Western and you'd be like, man, I'm going to show off my fucking best tail tap this weekend. But, like it was like we were all inspired by each other. Yeah. And now I feel like the scene's changed a lot where us older dudes are sort of doing our own thing. Do you find that like the young dudes, and maybe that's why you're sort of looking to inspire them again to sort of give them that platform to show their skills or something?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's interesting. Like, I feel like I definitely feel like you're right. Like, I feel like the time when I moved to Canberra, which was essentially the exact same time as what you did, and we were just both involved in this time when it just felt like BMX was just pumping. Like, it just grew and grew and grew. And I think that, like, Riss didn't really say it, but Riss, I think, deserves a lot of credit for
100%.
What that was, starting Backbone and just making it all happen. But I feel like all the guys that were riding then and they were like 18 to 20 years old, they're still mainly the dudes that are riding and still making it happen now. Like, it's just insane. Like, I've mentioned Will Gunn a lot, but Will Gunn is also 35. Yeah. And
Russell Brindley.
Yeah, Russell's
yourself,
like all these dudes,
Jack
and
O'Reilly,
they're still all the guys in Canberra that are like making it happen. Like, Will is, building new DIY spots and seriously riding better than he's ever has, like, in my opinion.
Did he ever fall off?
No, he's never fallen off. But the thing is, it's like, I just want to see, and I don't know if it is because of social media or what it is, but I just want to see, and maybe they are, and maybe it is just that we are so involved in our own scene. Like, I don't ride a lot with young kids apart from when I coach them, but we go and ride here and then we go home and do our home things, and maybe there are a lot of kids that are out doing DIY stuff and building jumps and, putting pallets against the wall or going searching for street spots. I really hope that there is. Yeah. But if there's not, that's where I want to illuminate, like your story and other people's stories and put stuff out there that makes people be like, oh, far out. Like, like I started the Act Jam again in 2013, like, but I'm just a dude that came to the Act Jam in 2005, and it's grown to what it is. I don't want to have to be the dude. I mean, I'll keep running it for as long as I can, but I don't want to have to be the dude in Canberra that's the only guy. I want to see a bunch of 18-year-olds coming through Canberra being like, let's do a jam this weekend. Oh, I built this concrete quarter out in Mitchell, or like I built this wall ride over here, and I just feel like that doesn't quite happen to the same level that it was happening.
And you look at it across the scene across Australia, right? Like, there's and this is maybe where I lost a little bit of inspiration, but there used to be jams all the time, like Halloween Jam, Bendigo Trail Jam, BMX X Games, like, let alone Act Jam. And then all of a sudden it sort of shifted a little bit, and I'm sure there were still jams, but as the scene's gotten a little bit older, the younger generation aren't really exactly throwing jams as much. Like, you see Johnny McKellar do it up in Queensland all the time, and you see the Lux dudes like every now and again throw a jam, and like I think that sparks from the older people actually setting up a pallet somewhere, and that's all it is at the skate park, but they throw a jam. It's like a barbecue. Like those little things that kids can do and then just holler at you. Like all the dudes that are just young dudes that are actually inspired by BMX, it's like it's that simple. Yeah, that's right. You just put something in a skate park and tell everybody about it, and before you know it's a jam. Yeah, exactly. And it's more about the gathering than it is that obstacle at the skate park. Yeah, 100%. You kind of get together and I agree. The scene. Yeah, I think that I just want to see more of that happen, and I think that maybe it just comes down to showing a little bit more of the culture behind BMX and things like that. So who knows? That's it. But yeah, the just I guess to get back to your whole like the way that your life is moving, you know, after the Back Bone video and things like that, then you kind of just started riding for Colt, which was pretty out of the blue. Like, I actually have shout out to Robbie. Yeah, that was real sick. I've actually got like a little video here. I'll bring it up. But yeah, Zac, like, you know, he was riding for himself for so long, like just riding, and then all of a sudden, like, Zac's talking about, oh, I'm riding for Colt now. So yeah, this video here, obviously my computer just going super slow, but yeah, you should go watch that. But this is the irony of, you know, like what I wasn't doing with Colony, I started to do in my own free time. Like every day I was getting, my goal for like 6 months was to get a clip. Just like go to a street spot and self-film it, no pressure, get a clip. Yeah. And like, it's funny, like we talk about it all the time, like that, you know, that rhythm you get in after you're riding every day. And like I'd lost that, but like, I was riding every day, and I was probably riding some of the weirdest street spots and sort of learning new things again. I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is stuff that I never thought I could do on street. Yeah. And then just was spamming the gram. Like, and it goes against everything I was just talking about. But like, yeah, but you're doing it for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it was more just a creative journey. It wasn't for anything. It was just like, I was feeling those creative juices of like, man, just getting my own content. And it was like a mission to get a clip every day. And then I was just doing my own little like monthly review things, and then so I was I was doing, and it's what the kids are doing these days. Like, you know, they're just sort of doing their own thing. And man, that's what's really good about, you know, like there is this platform for kids to do their own things now, because there are people watching. Like Robbie sort of was watching. Yeah. And like I've known Robbie for so many years, and he was talking to Jason, Pat, and them overseas, and they're like, man, we should put Zac on, and they're like, fucking oath, like, and that's just because you've built a relationship beforehand, and that's goes with, you know, like young dudes doing their own thing. If you go in the shop and then all of a sudden you recognize them on the gram and they're doing things, like, sure enough, like that helps your character to get sponsored, or it helps you to, even if it's like, you know, like, hey man, come to this jam, like it's just a shout out or something like that. But like, so Robbie, being Morales, being the genius that he is, but just kind of just like sent me over some stuff, and it just gave me that spark again. It really, I don't know, I was like, and it's funny because like the seasons here in Canberra are so harsh. Like that was all 6 months of spring to summer, and then he sent me stuff, and then it hit winter, and you're like, fuck out of here. Like I got to keep it up. But, yeah. But I've always loved what they've done, man. Like, you know, every video they've ever done was the same sort of vibe of, you know, like from back in the day when we did the Back Bone DVD, or we did the Afraid edits. It's like there was something about the video is, the longevity of the video is about the stamp that it left on in that moment. Mm-hmm. Like I think if you're doing something completely different and sort of in your own lane, and the writing's badass and the editing's really good, the music's good, then that's forever. Like those Can I Talk videos and like even Back to Fit Life, like you just remember Dax Enders and stuff like that. Like those songs are iconic to the writing and the company, and I think it was really cool to sort of jump on Colt because I mean I just love what they were doing, and the dudes ride and shred and
I've actually realized that you have that like Chase D Hart swagger, but you also mix that with like the Van Home and Enders.
And I'll take that any day.
That's my little Zac Miner compliment for the day. But I mean it's been definitely cool to watch that like second coming. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like you've risen again with excitement to ride, and I think just to complement it with. It seemed like it happened right at the same time that you were getting really creative with your business. You know what I mean? Like you started Miner Projects, which is the roofing company that you own. And I thought that was really cool because I don't know too much about construction industry, right? But it just felt when I saw you doing Miner Projects and then your Instagram, just to quickly show that to the viewers, like when I was seeing that, basically Zac started a roofing company, and the thing that I wanted to talk about with it was just that it felt super BMXy. I know that sounds weird, but to me when I look at it, it has such a more creative vibe. Like you're looking at the world and how construction industry can happen through this like BMXy vibe. Like that's the feeling that I got, and I mean I could be wrong, but is that something where you drew?
Like if anything, man, I praise the Colony days when there was like, because you're trying to, the early days of Facebook or Instagram, you're trying to content create, and almost your brand is every picture, like along that timeline. So I've sort of always lived my life like that anyway, like where if you're putting something up, it's got to be relevant to the time, and it's got to be a little bit personal to you. So even if it's just a different angle. So the roofing sort of company, when it started, man, like and it coincides with the backdrop we got in Canberra. Like it's the bush capital, and it's very much photogenic. If you can do a really good job, and the roofing game is just a completely different contrast to the bush backdrop, that like these sharp angles and everything like that, if you hit it in the right light and the angles, and you could almost create an image of the ideal what I love about my job, like because I genuinely love roofing. I think it's like that. You're up in the elements all the time. You got a bird's eye view, and you just look over everything. And I think like I really wanted to, highlight that. In the only way I knew possible was through my previous years with BMX and shooting photos, and I'd get Troy Harradine in, and he'd do drone shots for me, and we kind of work in this like where we have this vision for things, and it's sort of like, and it comes from a BMX background with Troy too, like that. Like you want things crisp, and you want things to be sort of like catch the eye. That's like anything in a photo that I've ever known with like BMX is like, you really want that image to sort of capture you for a second, and it's like a piece of art. So like the stuff that Gascoigne used to do was just a timeline of that whole trick, but it was like that second. Yeah. And if you can capture that, the same sort of aspect with roofing, whether it's the sun in the background or the hot air balloons floating over the top, then it's really cool. Yeah, I feel the same. Like I always feel like BMXers, like Nick Gascoigne, perfect example. Like he made you want to look at photos, you know what I mean? And then, but he was always great
BMX photographer, and now he's taken. I feel like he still has that rider's eye,
Yeah.
but he's not even shooting BMX anymore. Like, it's really weird. Like,
yeah.
you can see that through, like, I can see that as a BMXer through your whole minor projects thing. I'm looking at it, I'm like, I've never seen anyone do something in like construction industry where it looks like exciting to look at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because some people could be like, why would I want to look at a roof? But you see your page, it's like, you've made this just look enticing and people want to see more. And that's the feeling that you get from a BMX photo. It's almost like, oh man. Yeah. So it's kudos to you, because I feel like it's exciting to see that you've taken this, like, you know, your heart and soul of BMX and applied it to your job that has nothing to do with BMX. Yeah. And now all of a sudden it feels like something that's exciting for someone to look at. Yeah. And then as well as that, like, the other thing that I wanted to bring up about it was just the fact that you have employed a lot of BMXers as well. Like, to me, that's really cool. It's almost like Riss said last podcast, like, keep BMX in the hands of BMXers. Yeah. Now you're kind of just keeping you're bringing BMXers into the world that isn't in BMX necessarily, and you're looking after these boys that.
Man, like, your social circle is what you've always known. So, like, I feel the most comfortable around BMXers because you have that, you can shit talk and you can just bounce ideas, and it's always the same sort of feedback. Yeah. And, like, trying to apply that to something that you want to get out of them, the best in them, it's very easy because they understand the trials and tribulations, or the practice that it takes to learn something and manifest it and make it their own. And, like, the roofing game's no different. Any trade's no different. And what I love about the stuff that we do is, like, we give a shit. So, like, that's a reason that those jobs that we're getting are really good, because from the get-go, I've cared about my job, and everything I do is go on that extra 10%, and then almost like how you project it back to whoever you did the job for, or the gram, so that, like, you're almost selling this idea that everything you're doing is to a higher standard, and then piggybacking the idea that you've got BMXers on board that have the same sort of upbringing through BMX, that then apply it to the tools, and it flows so much better because like, I'll quote Tommy Caldwell from MBD. He said, like, we're the misfits that shouldn't ever have made it, but for whatever reason we're killing it, like because we have that eye for detail. Like, we care. Like, everything we did in BMX was, we just finessed it. And then now, if you get to put that back into a business and you can make you forget the money side of it, but that's what comes as a result of it. It's like, if you give that extra 10% and do that little bit more, the money comes later. And it's like, it should never be about the money. If you're doing it right from the start and you're doing the jobs you want to do, then it just coincides. Yeah. And then you get to employ the right people, and then you're not having to employ people that you don't get along with and stuff like that. It's all organic. Mm-hmm. So
that's it. Yeah, that's such good advice, and I feel like it's good for people to hear that, because I think from the outside looking in, say skateboarding, because Tommy Caldwell's a skateboarder, and obviously BMXing gets a little bit of a bad rap because we're seen as misfits, but really, like, BMXers are so dedicated, so passionate, like, they're completely driven, like, to the point where they can't think of anything else, and
it's a little bit OCD.
Yeah, and that happens because it takes so much effort and so much skill and so much drive and passion and all of these things to pull a trick. That then once you have that ingrained into your mentality, and then you apply that across to something like your job, then your job becomes easy, and it also becomes easier to set yourself a higher standard. Yeah. So that then you're setting yourself this higher standard without even thinking about it, because you just love you love the challenge. Yeah. And then financially you get rewarded for it, I guess. So it's exciting to to put it out there for people, because I feel like not a lot of BMX, all of those sort of like misfit type sports or whatever gets a bad rap, but they actually probably the most dedicated people of all time, because
I mean, look at you guys behind the scenes. You don't get the credit for the trails you build and stuff like that, but then it resonates with what Backbone is for the last nearly 20 years. It's coming up on 20 years. Like, it stayed strong because people across the world know, like you don't blast it that you're building this on this weekend and that, but people know how much hard work goes into building trails, that then when you run the business and run jams, it's like, that's just a continuation of what you do behind the scenes, and the shop is still able to operate, and you got a good crew behind you. It's like, there's that like sort of umbrella of what makes something good is the work ethic behind the scenes. Yeah,
I mean, I appreciate that. I hope so. We just want to, the same way that's again like the way I get inspired by your roofing, and just seeing how you can see the strains of BMX that have filtered through into your dedication of your work. That's, I guess, the same sort of thing that I want to try and do with Backbone.
I'm washed up now anyway. I feel like I got to find a way to make money.
No way.
I'm done.
Yeah, well, that's the good thing, man. It sounds like you've always just walked to the beat of your own drum with your riding, and same goes now with your business. And the exciting thing about being like that is the fact that you are never washed up. I know you've always called yourself as washed up, but you essentially always seem to be finding different ways to get inspiration and different ways to sort of like move through the world on your bike. And to me, like, that always translates to you riding really well. I think that's, your riding speaks for itself when you're inspired, so it's exciting to watch.
Yeah, 100%.
But I'm excited to have had you on, Zac, and it's been a long time. No worries.
Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. Yeah, so birthday jam.
I'll just get my peg leg out.
Yeah.
I'll be dropping in on the wheelchair.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll have a belated birthday jam.
Man, I'm keen. I think that this has sort of inspired me a little bit in the regard, and I think like it coincides where Act Jam will probably come back around about that time of when my knee's good, and hopefully like that's the end of winter and we can just sort of build something again where it's like, I think half of it is just being inspired, like you just, as long as somebody's doing something, man, and you jump on that train, you can't go wrong.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. But yeah, man, thanks for coming in, and appreciate you. Thanks to everyone for watching, and be sure to do all the liking and subscribing and the
down here somewhere.
I've never done that yet, but the down the bottom thing, and leave a comment, and thanks guys, appreciate it.